Welcome to the world of fear. This is Tale of Darkness, where every story drags you deeper into the darkness. Stories that will quicken your heartbeat. If you're watching this, you need to know the truth, because the killer in my town, he's not gone. He never left. I know the official story. I've read the headlines. I've seen the smug faces of cops on TV swearing the case is closed. But I also know what it feels like to lie awake at night, listening to footsteps that don't belong in my hallway. I know the weight of eyes that follow me when the streets are empty, the kind of gaze that slips under your skin and makes you wonder if you're already dead and just haven't realized it yet. I shouldn't even be talking about this. People who dig too deep into his story don't last long. That's not a theory, it's a pattern. My neighbor tried years back. He wanted to prove the police were covering something up. He went missing before he could post his findings. The worst part, a week later, his dog was found tied to his porch, still alive but shaking so violently it couldn't stand. No one could make sense of that. I could. The message was clear, stop talking. But here I am talking. You're probably wondering why. Why risk it? The truth is, I don't have much left to lose. And maybe I want someone else out there to share the burden of knowing. Because once you see the signs, you can't unsee them. The town looks normal during the day. Kids ride their bikes. People wave at each other in grocery store aisles. But when night falls, the shadows are wrong. They move differently here, and sometimes, if you're unlucky enough, you catch a glimpse of him standing where the light almost reaches, head tilted, waiting. That's when you understand. He doesn't hunt like other killers. He lingers. He lets you rot from the inside out before he even touches you. He's patient, too patient for someone human. Most people don't survive long enough to tell this story. They either disappear or turn up in ways I can't describe without making you shut this off and pretend you never heard me. That's what everyone else in town does, pretend. But pretending hasn't saved anyone. I wish I could say I stumbled onto this by accident, that it wasn't personal, but it is. He knows my name. He's proven it. And maybe by the time you finish hearing this, he'll know yours too. But I should start at the beginning, before everything went to hell. Back then, our biggest problem was the high school football team losing too much. That was the kind of town I lived in, small, safe, tucked away from the world like some postcard nobody ever mailed. Everyone knew everyone else, or at least knew whose kid belonged to whose family, who worked the counter at the diner, who fixed your car when it stalled halfway down Main Street. People here didn't lock their doors, not because we were naive, but because we honestly thought there was nothing to be afraid of. Saturday mornings smelled like fresh coffee and bacon wafting out of kitchens. Kids raced their bikes down cracked sidewalks, and old men argued over fishing spots at the barber shop. The grocery store cashier, June, would always slip an extra pack of gum into your bag if she liked you, and the mayor himself would stop to help you carry groceries to your car. If you wanted drama, you had to make it yourself, like the Wilsons fighting over who left the trash cans out, or the endless debates over whether the 4th of July fireworks should start at 8 or 9. It sounds corny, I know, but it really was that kind of place. The kind of place where summer evenings stretched forever, the sky burning pink while fireflies blinked lazily over the fields. The kind of place where, walking home after dark, you'd wave to your neighbor sitting on his porch swing, sipping beer, nodding at you like all was right in the world. I loved it here. I felt safe here. But safety has a way of dulling your senses. It makes you miss things you shouldn't, and looking back now, there were signs. I just didn't want to see them. Like the nights when the dogs on Maple Street wouldn't stop barking for hours, their howls rolling through the quiet until people slammed their windows shut, or the way old Mrs. Cartwright swore she saw someone standing in her backyard, staring at her through the glass, only for the police to dismiss it as old age and an overactive imagination. At the time, we all laughed about it, shaking our heads at her dramatic retellings at the diner. Still, every so often, I'd wake up and swear I heard something, an extra set of footsteps on the pavement outside, long after everyone had gone to bed. I'd roll over, tell myself it was nothing, and let the lull of familiarity drag me back to sleep. Because that's the thing about a small town. You don't believe bad things happen here. You read about them, sure. Murders in cities, strange cases in other states, horror stories whispered online, but not here. Not on our streets, not to our neighbors. That illusion was comfortable. It was also deadly. The shift started small, so small most people ignored it. A few missing pets, flyers stapled to telephone poles, kids crying as parents promised their cat or dog would come home soon. Then came the stranger stories, odd sightings, shadows moving against the grain of the streetlights, figures disappearing before anyone could get close. We told ourselves it was nothing, we had to, but it was something, and that something was already here, slipping into the cracks of our safe little town while we kept pretending everything was fine. At first, nobody wanted to believe it was anything more than bad luck, the kind of misfortune every town has to endure eventually. But whispers spread fast in a place as small as ours, curling under doors and seeping into late night conversations at the diner. Someone said their dog went missing, then 2 more families claimed the same thing. Before long, half the telephone poles in town were covered in stapled flyers, photos of smiling golden retrievers, lazy-eyed cats, even a kid's rabbit named Clover. Kids messing around, nothing more. Old man Greeley grumbled at the barber shop. Probably some teenagers with too much time on their hands. He wasn't the only one who thought so. The town was full of easy explanations. Coyotes, pranksters, cars speeding down country roads. Anything that let us laugh nervously and move on. People don't want to believe in monsters when they've got Sunday church and pancake breakfasts to worry about. But I knew better. The noises started in the middle of the night, slow, deliberate scraping sounds along the siding of my house, like someone dragging a stick just under my bedroom window. Sometimes I'd jolt awake and hear breathing, close enough that my heart froze, waiting for a face to appear through the glass. When I forced myself to look, there was never anyone there, just shadows and silence. Then came the stories. A masked figure spotted near the old grain silos. A teenager swore she saw someone crouched at the edge of her yard, too tall, too still. Her parents laughed it off, called it imagination. I wanted to believe them, but I'd already heard the scraping outside my own window. One night at the gas station, I overheard 2 guys talking. "You hear about that cat they found by the tracks?" One asked, lowering his voice. "Roadkill?" The other muttered, "No. They said it didn't look like that. Said it looked arranged." I left before I could hear more, but that word clung to me. Arranged. The tension around town thickened. Even people who brushed it off started locking their doors, something nobody ever used to bother with. You could feel it when you walked down Main Street at dusk, the way people hurried home, the way conversations died as soon as shadows grew long. Everyone felt it, but no one wanted to name it. There's something they don't tell you in the police reports. Something I saw. The first time they pulled a body from Miller's Creek, I happened to be nearby. A girl had been jogging, maybe 20 years old. She didn't come home. By the time they dragged her out, the whole town was buzzing with rumors. They said it was an accident. Maybe she slipped. Maybe she drowned. But I was there. I saw the look on the officer's face as he zipped the bag, and I saw her hands. They were bent the wrong way, like someone had posed her. When I asked about it, I got silence, a hard stare. Then the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes, nothing to worry about, go on home. That was the start of a pattern. The police shrugged everything off, brushed aside reports of masked figures, explained away every strange death. Coyotes, accidents, teenagers, anything but the truth, and maybe everyone else was happy to believe them, to cling to the illusion of safety, but I couldn't. The whispers had become screams in my head, too loud to ignore. And if the authorities weren't going to do anything, then I'd have to start looking into it myself. That night changed everything. We weren't safe anymore. The town that once felt so harmless, where kids played tag in grocery store aisles and neighbors waved from their porches, woke up to blood on the pavement. Not the kind of accident you whisper about at the diner, not a car crash or some farm mishap. This was different. This was deliberate. Her name was Claire. She worked the evening shift at the diner, the same girl who poured my coffee with a smile so wide it felt impossible she wouldn't always be there. She didn't show up for work one night. Her boss thought she'd flaked. By morning, they found her in the alley behind the post office. At first, they tried to keep the details quiet, but in a small town, silence never lasts. Everyone knew within hours, and by noon they were already telling each other stories. Some said her throat was cut, others claimed she'd been beaten. None of them were close to the truth. I didn't want to see. I really didn't. But curiosity mixed with dread pulled me to the alley long after the body had been taken. And even in her absence, the place reeked of iron, thick and metallic, clinging to the air. A dark stain soaked into the dirt, too wide, too deep. The real horror, though, was the way she'd been left. I shouldn't have seen the photos, but I did. A friend of mine, a paramedic, slipped after one too many beers and admitted they'd never seen anything like it. It wasn't just a killing, he whispered. It was arranged. Her body had been placed with care, folded into an almost symmetrical pose, arms bent at impossible angles, legs tucked, head tilted in a way no living person could hold. And carved into the skin of her forearm was a symbol, sharp, deliberate lines forming a spiral that coiled inward until it cut deep enough to meet bone. And here's where it gets disturbing. That symbol wasn't new. I'd seen it before, not in person but online, buried in late-night forums about unsolved crimes, ritualistic killings from other states, even other countries, the same spiral, the same calling card. The police didn't want to hear it. This isn't some horror movie. The sheriff said at a town meeting, "We're looking into it, but there's no reason to believe this was anything more than an isolated incident." An isolated incident. That's how they described a girl mutilated and displayed like a warning sign. I remember the way people nodded along, some even sighing in relief, clinging to the easy explanation because the alternative was too terrifying. But I couldn't. I kept picturing Claire's smile, the way she'd slide a slice of pie in front of me with a wink, now reduced to a grotesque figure laid out like art for a killer no one wanted to admit existed. I started digging. Notebooks, printouts, grainy images from true crime blogs. The more I looked, the more I saw the pattern, the spiral. Chicago, 1998. A woman found in her bathtub, same mark. Denver, 2004. A man left in his garage, bones twisted, spiral carved into his chest. Different places, different times, but the same signature. And now here in my town. Coincidence? No. It was deliberate. A thread tying us to something much larger, something that stretched beyond state lines, maybe beyond decades. And yet when I brought it up, when I tried to show anyone what I'd found, I got the same reaction every time. You're overthinking this. Don't go scaring people. Let the cops handle it. But the cops weren't handling it. They were burying it. Smiling for cameras, shaking hands, insisting all was well, while the spiral burned itself into my brain. The night after Claire's death, I walked home down Main Street. The shops were closed, windows dark, but I could still picture the way it looked on brighter days. Balloons tied to lampposts during parades, kids pressing their faces against the candy shop glass. That memory clashed violently with the image of her body, the careful precision of her mutilation. And I realized then, the town I thought I knew was gone. What lived in its place was something else, something colder, something marked, and I had to find out what. The police said it was random. I knew better. They paraded their theories on TV, stiff uniforms and rehearsed words, claiming the deaths had no connection. Unfortunate incidents, they called them, accidents, robberies gone wrong, even domestic disputes. But I'd seen the marks, I'd seen the spiral, and once you see it, you can't look away. It started with Claire in the alley. Then a week later, a young man was found in his pickup truck at the edge of the cornfields, slumped over the wheel, chest cut open in a pattern too precise to be chance. Another week passed, and an elderly woman vanished from her porch swing. 2 days later, hikers found her body propped upright against a tree deep in the woods, her hands crossed in her lap, the spiral carved into her throat. Different people, different places, different methods, but always the same signature. I began writing everything down, every detail, every rumor, every scrap of information that slipped past the official reports. At first, it was just notes on loose paper. Then it became a dedicated notebook, my own log of madness, dates, locations, sketches of the spiral when I couldn't bear to see it, but needed to remember. If anyone ever found my notes, they'd think I was obsessed. They'd be right. I wasn't the only one who noticed. Survivors, few as they were, started whispering their stories, though most were too scared to talk out loud. I tracked one down, a teenager named Emily, who'd been walking home when she swore she saw him. He was just standing there, she whispered, twisting the strap of her backpack as we sat in the corner booth of the diner. Tall, like over 6 feet. He had something on his face, a mask or... No, not a mask, more like a sack. I don't know. I froze. Then he tilted his head at me, like he was curious, and the next second, he was gone, just gone. Her mother shushed her halfway through, glaring at me as if I was the problem. Don't encourage her, she snapped. It was probably a trick of the light. Kids get ideas. They left before I could press further. Another man, a trucker who'd passed through town, told a different story. I found him smoking outside the gas station, his eyes darting nervously to the tree line. I saw him near the rest stop, he said. Middle of the night. Thought he was a hitchhiker, but he didn't move right, too stiff. When I slowed down, he lifted his arm and pointed at me. Not a wave, not a signal, just pointed. I hit the gas and never looked back. He flicked his cigarette into the dirt and muttered, "Don't write my name down." The town tightened its grip on denial, even as fear spread like wildfire. Parents kept kids home from school. Stores closed earlier. People stopped lingering in the diner or gossiping on porches after sunset. And yet, the killings didn't stop. If anything, they grew bolder. The media tried to descend, but the sheriff pushed them out, dismissing their questions. We don't need outsiders stirring panic. Panic, though, was already here, and through it all I kept writing, filling page after page, trying to make sense of what felt like senseless cruelty. But the patterns were there, hidden beneath the horror. Locations formed rough circles on a map. Victims weren't chosen at random, they were linked. Neighbors, co-workers, acquaintances, people who brushed shoulders daily. The spiral wasn't just a mark, it was a message. One night I stayed up late, cross-referencing old reports online. The spiral appeared in unsolved cases scattered across the country, stretching back decades. Same arrangement of bodies, same carved symbol. The killer wasn't just in my town. He'd been moving, leaving breadcrumbs in the form of corpses, and now he'd settled here. Why, I shouldn't say this, not yet, but there was one night I almost died. The night he made it clear I wasn't just an observer, I was part of his story. But that's later. For now, what mattered was this. The killings weren't random. The spiral wasn't random. It was deliberate, methodical. He was playing a game no one else could see, and the police refused to admit existed. The more I learned, the more I realized something chilling. He wasn't hiding from me. He wanted me to notice, to connect the dots, to obsess, and he knew I was watching. It's one thing when there's a killer in your town. It's another when he knows your name. At first, I thought I was just imagining it. The paranoia of someone who'd read too much, connected too many dots. But the first time I saw the envelope, I knew. It was slipped under my front door, folded perfectly in half. No return address, no stamp. Just my name written in jagged black ink. Not resident, and not neighbor. My name. Inside was a single piece of paper. The same spiral I'd seen carved into flesh. Thick, uneven lines, drawn hard enough to dent the paper. No words, just that mark. I sat at my kitchen table for what felt like hours, staring at it, waiting for the lines to shift into something else, waiting for it to explain itself. It didn't. It didn't have to. The message was clear. I see you. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with the lights off, gripping a baseball bat, watching shadows crawl across the walls. Every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the wind against the siding felt like him, just on the other side of the glass. I told myself it was an isolated thing, a sick joke, but the next morning another envelope was wedged between my screen door and the frame. This one had words, just 3, scrawled in the same jagged ink, closer than you think. When I was a kid, I used to love sitting on that same porch in the evenings, watching fireflies blink over the grass, listening to my dad's voice as he told me stories about the old days. It was safety in its purest form. Now that porch felt poisoned, the boards warped under my feet as if they knew someone had stood there during the night, close enough to touch the door, close enough to reach for the handle. I still have one of the notes he left me. Should I show it? No. It's better if I just read it. The handwriting was uneven, frantic. I like how you watch. Don't stop. I'll know if you stop. After that, the phone calls started. Always around 2 a.m. Always just static at first, like the sound of someone breathing too close to the receiver. Sometimes I swore I could hear my name, whispered low, stretched out unnaturally, as if savoring each syllable. Once there was laughter, short, sharp, like someone choking it back. I stopped answering, but the calls kept coming. The machine picked them up, filling tape after tape with hissing, broken voices. When I tried to play them back in daylight, they sounded warped, like the audio had rotted. But I knew what I'd heard, Neighbors noticed me fraying at the edges. You look tired. June at the grocery store told me, handing me a bag of bread. I almost laughed in her face, tired. I was unraveling. Every shadow, every creak, every reflection in the corner of my eye was him. I tried to tell myself he couldn't get in. The locks were strong, the windows shut tight. But locks mean nothing to someone who isn't breaking in to hurt you. He was breaking in to remind me he could. One night, lying in bed, I heard it. My name, whispered right outside the window, not shouted. Whispered, so soft, so deliberate, like a lover leaning close in the dark. I froze, pulling the covers to my chin, every muscle in my body screaming to move, but locked in place. My breath sounded like thunder in my ears. When I finally found the courage to look, the glass was empty. Nothing but the reflection of my own wide eyes. The next morning, there was dirt on the windowsill. I started keeping my journal more obsessively after that, documenting every sound, every note, every call. Part of me thought if I could build a record, prove it wasn't just in my head, maybe someone would believe me. Another part of me knew that's exactly what he wanted. To make me obsessed, to keep me writing, to keep me feeding into his game. It worked. The line between memory and intrusion blurred. Childhood streets that once felt warm and familiar now seemed distorted, as if the houses leaned inward, watching me. The playground where I used to swing under a perfect summer sky now looked like a stage for something waiting in the tree line. Even the church bells on Sunday sounded hollow, like they were tolling for me. And through it all he watched, not from a distance anymore, not through rumors or whispers. He was here with me, talking to me, laughing at me. The police still insisted it was random, notes, probably prank kids. One officer said when I showed him the spiral, "You should throw it away. Don't give them the attention." His hand rested too long on my shoulder, his smile too rehearsed. He didn't believe me. Maybe he didn't want to. But the killer believed in me. That's the difference. He wasn't hiding from me anymore. He was inviting me closer, daring me to follow the breadcrumbs he left in spirals and whispers. And deep down, I knew where this was headed. It was only a matter of time before we came face to face. You want to know what he looks like? I wish I didn't. People think they want answers, that the mystery is worse than the truth. They're wrong. The truth is worse. The truth sticks to you, like blood on your hands that won't wash away no matter how hard you scrub. And once you see him, you understand. He isn't supposed to exist. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That night was heavy with the kind of silence that presses against your skin. I'd been awake for hours, sitting at my desk, staring at my notes. The spiral appeared in my dreams now, carved into the backs of my eyelids, dragging me down deeper every time I closed my eyes. Sleep wasn't an option anymore, so I wrote, because writing was all I had. Around 3 a.m., the phone rang. I didn't answer. I'd stopped answering weeks ago, but this time the ringing didn't stop. It went on and on, vibrating in my bones until finally, with shaking hands, I picked it up. Nothing, just static, then a click, and then silence. I thought that was it, another cruel reminder that he could reach me whenever he wanted. But then I heard it, the front door creak, slowly, carefully. I froze. My bat was leaning against the wall, but my legs felt like stone. The sound of footsteps followed, measured, deliberate, moving across the living room floor. Too slow to be someone breaking in to steal, too purposeful to be anything but him. I forced myself to stand, every nerve screaming, and gripped the bat so hard my palms burned. My hallway stretched out before me, impossibly long in the dark, shadows leaning inward like they wanted to swallow me whole. I could hear him breathing, not loud, not rushed, just steady, calm, as if he knew exactly how this would end. I wish I could tell you I burst out bravely, that I swung with precision and courage. The truth, I stumbled forward, heart in my throat, bat raised like a terrified child. And there he was. I won't describe him all at once. You don't want that. You don't want the image burned into your mind the way it's burned into mine. So I'll start small. The mask, or what looked like a mask. Burlap, rough and stained, pulled tight around his head with uneven stitching. Holes cut for eyes, but not symmetrical, not human. Behind them, darkness. Not eyes I could see, just pits. His body was tall, too tall. Not impossibly so, but wrong. Shoulders hunched as if bones didn't fit right. Arms hanging just a little too low. His clothes were filthy, torn in places, but not random tears. They looked intentional, as if he wanted to show glimpses of skin without ever letting you see enough, and the smell, like damp earth and rust. He tilted his head at me, slowly, the same way Emily had described, curious, like he was studying me, like I was part of an experiment. I should have run. Instead, I froze, staring, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Was he human? He moved like one, but with a stiffness that felt practiced, wrong, like he'd studied us, mimicked us, but never quite got it right. Then he stepped forward. Instinct took over. I swung the bat. It connected with a sickening crack against his shoulder, the force reverberating up my arms. He staggered but didn't fall. Instead, he laughed, not loud, not manic, just a low chuckle, almost playful. I swung again, harder. This time he fell, crashing against the floorboards. I didn't wait. I ran past him, out the door, into the night. The cold air slapped me awake, my lungs burning as I sprinted down the street barefoot, not daring to look back. I don't remember how far I ran, maybe blocks, maybe miles. When I finally collapsed in someone's yard, chest heaving, I looked behind me. The street was empty, silent, calm, too calm. The next morning the police came. I told them everything. The notes, the calls, the man in my house. They searched, found the door pried open, the bat splintered and stained, but no man, no footprints, no blood, nothing, probably a bray. Kin, one officer said. You scared him off, lucky you, lucky, that's what they called it. A week later, they announced on the news that a suspect had been caught in another county. Some drifter with a record. They said he confessed, said the killings were over. The town breathed a sigh of relief. People unlocked their doors again, laughed again, pretended again, but I knew because of what I saw in those eyes, or rather, the absence of them. I knew because of the way he laughed when I struck him, like it didn't matter. Like it was part of the plan. They can say the case is closed. They can say the killer's behind bars. But I saw him, and what I saw wasn't human. This isn't over. They told us it was over. That was the real lie. The town wanted to believe it, needed to. After months of fear, after the funerals and the vigils and the endless whispers in grocery store aisles, people were desperate for a neat little ending. A confession, a suspect, a name they could hate. The media gave them exactly that. Local police nail serial killer. The mayor shook hands in front of cameras. The police chief promised, you're safe again. But lies have fingerprints if you know where to look. And I couldn't stop looking. The first thing that didn't add up, the so-called confession. They said the drifter admitted to everything, that he named victims, described the spiral symbol, even recounted details that only the killer could know. But when I pressed one of the officers I knew, an old high school buddy now working the desk, he wouldn't meet my eyes. He just muttered, "That's what the report says," and changed the subject. Reports. That word gnawed at me, so I went digging. Some of you watching this will understand. Some of you know what it's like when something burrows under your skin, when curiosity becomes obsession. I pulled strings, I lied, I traded favors I'll never get back. And eventually, a copy of the coroner's report ended up in my lap. And here's where it gets disturbing. The report didn't match. Not the crime scene photographs I'd seen leaked online, not the survivor statements. The killer they arrested, wrong height, wrong build. The scars described on his torso didn't line up with what I'd seen when my bat tore through fabric. Most damning of all, the fingerprints on the bodies didn't match him. Not even close. The report acknowledged that, quietly, in a single line buried at the bottom. I found something else too, something that still keeps me awake. One of the autopsy notes on a victim included a phrase I can't get out of my head. Residual markings consistent with post-mortem movement. Post-mortem movement, as in the body was moved after death, but the pattern of bruising suggested the victim struggled during it. How do you explain that? You can't, unless you accept what they won't say out loud, that this thing, whatever it is, isn't just killing. It's playing. I know some of you will ask for proof. You'll want me to post the documents, the scans, the photos. I can't. Not because I don't want to, but because I tried. Every upload was flagged, removed, locked. My account's frozen. Someone's watching. Someone's making sure the story stays clean. And then there are the tapes. I wasn't supposed to find them. Old VHS tapes, boxed and unlabeled, tucked away in the evidence room of a friend's uncle. Retired cop who still had keys he wasn't supposed to keep. Grainy footage, dark alleys, basement rooms, faces half, lit by bare bulbs, and always the spiral, drawn on walls, etched into skin, carved into wood. The dates on the tapes, some were decades old, long before our town's nightmare began. Different states, different victims, the same spiral. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just us. It never was. You listening right now. You're part of this now, whether you like it or not. Because once you've seen the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you start connecting the dots, you start to notice things. The missing persons reports that vanish from databases, the articles quietly pulled from archives, the names of families who stop speaking overnight. This thing isn't local, it isn't random, and it isn't done. They want you to think it's over. They want you to stop asking questions, stop pulling at the threads. But if you've stuck with me this far, you already know the truth. Something's being hidden. Something bigger than one killer in one small town. And the worst part, I think he knows I've figured it out. Because 2 nights ago, I woke up to find another note under my door. Same paper, same slanted handwriting. Just 5 words this time, not yet. Be patient. So no, it's not over. The killer isn't gone. He's waiting. They told us it was over. That was the real lie. The town wanted to believe it, needed to. After months of fear, after the funerals and the vigils and the endless whispers in grocery store aisles, people were desperate for a neat little ending. A confession, a suspect, a name they could hate. The media gave them exactly that. Local police nail serial killer. The mayor shook hands in front of cameras. The police chief promised, "You're safe again." But lies have fingerprints if you know where to look. And I couldn't stop looking. The first thing that didn't add up, the so-called confession. They said the drifter admitted to everything, that he named victims, described the spiral symbol, even recounted details that only the killer could know. But when I pressed one of the officers I knew, an old high school buddy now working the desk, he wouldn't meet my eyes. He just muttered, "That's what the report says," and changed the subject, reports. That word gnawed at me, so I went digging. Some of you watching this will understand. Some of you know what it's like when something burrows under your skin, when curiosity becomes obsession. I pulled strings, I lied, I traded favors I'll never get back. And eventually, a copy of the coroner's report ended up in my lap, and here's where it gets disturbing. The report didn't match. Not the crime scene photographs I'd seen leaked online, not the survivor statements. The killer they arrested, wrong height, wrong build. The scars described on his torso didn't line up with what I'd seen when my bat tore through fabric. Most damning of all, the fingerprints on the bodies didn't match him. Not even close. The report acknowledged that, quietly, in a single line buried at the bottom, I found something else too, something that still keeps me awake. One of the autopsy notes on a victim included a phrase I can't get out of my head: residual markings consistent with post-mortem movement. Post-mortem movement, as in the body was moved after death, but the pattern of bruising suggested the victim struggled during it. How do you explain that? You can't, unless you accept what they won't say out loud. That this thing, whatever it is, isn't just killing. It's playing. I know some of you will ask for proof. You'll want me to post the documents, the scans, the photos. I can't. Not because I don't want to, but because I tried. Every upload was flagged, removed, locked. My account's frozen. Someone's watching. Someone's making sure the story stays clean. And then there are the tapes. I wasn't supposed to find them. Old VHS tapes, boxed and unlabeled, tucked away in the evidence room of a friend's uncle. Retired cop who still had keys he wasn't supposed to keep. Grainy footage. Dark alleys, basement rooms, faces half, lit by bare bulbs, and always the spiral, drawn on walls, etched into skin, carved into wood. The dates on the tapes, some were decades old, long before our town's nightmare began. Different states, different victims, the same spiral. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just us. It never was. You listening right now, you're part of this now, whether you like it or not. Because once you've seen the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you start connecting the dots, you start to notice things. The missing persons reports that vanish from databases, the articles quietly pulled from archives, the names of families who stop speaking overnight. This thing isn't local, it isn't random, and it isn't done. They want you to think it's over. They want you to stop asking questions, stop pulling at the threads. But if you've stuck with me this far, you already know the truth. Something's being hidden. Something bigger than one killer in one small town. And the worst part, I think he knows I've figured it out. Because 2 nights ago, I woke up to find another note under my door. Same paper, same slanted handwriting. Just 5 words this time, not yet, be patient. So no, it's not over, the killer isn't gone, he's waiting. This is the part I don't like telling, but you need to hear it. It started with silence. Not the comfortable kind you get on a late summer evening, when crickets hum and neighbor's porch lights glow warm against the dark. This was the kind of silence that feels wrong, heavy, intentional. The kind that makes you realize every living thing around you has gone still, like they know what's coming. I knew, too, somewhere deep in my bones I felt it. The night had finally arrived. The first sign was the smell, metallic, sour, like blood left out in the heat. It crept in through the cracks of my old house, thick enough to taste on my tongue. Then the tapping started, at the window, at the door, against the walls. Not frantic, measured, almost playful, like a child knocking in rhythm to a secret game. I grabbed the bat again, though I knew it wouldn't save me. Still, holding it made me feel less like prey. When the glass shattered in the kitchen, the whole house seemed to exhale. I ran stumbling down the hallway, the bat heavy in my hands. I wanted to scream, but the sound lodged in my throat. My only thought was, don't look back, but I did, and I saw him. You want to know what he looks like? I wish I didn't. I'll never tell you everything, not fully. Some things are better left rotting in the dark. But there was one thing about his face I can't get out of my head, no matter how hard I try. Something wrong in the way it shifted, like his skin didn't fit right, like it was borrowed. And the eyes, too many emotions packed into them at once. Hunger, amusement, recognition. He knew me. The chase spilled out into the night, through streets that had once felt safe. Porch lights flickered on as I sprinted past, but no doors opened. No one came out to help. It was just me and him, our footsteps echoing off the hollow skeleton of the town. I cut through the park, lungs burning, legs screaming. The carousel stood still in the moonlight, horses frozen mid-leap, their painted eyes gleaming like witnesses. I remember the absurd thought hitting me. I used to ride those, I used to laugh there. Childhood memories stained now, twisted by fear. Then came the violence, fast, brutal, inescapable. He cornered me near the bandstand, and, his shadow stretching impossibly long across the grass. The first swing of the bat connected, a crack that should have dropped him. But he only laughed, a low, broken sound, half human, half not. He didn't stumble, he advanced. Every strike felt useless. My arms shook, my body weakening as he loomed closer. And yet, in the middle of that chaos, there was a strange calm. The night air cool against my sweat, the moon a pale coin above us, the smell of cut grass carried on the breeze, surreal, almost peaceful, as if nature itself didn't care what happened here. I don't remember the final blow, not clearly. Maybe I got lucky, maybe he let me go. All I know is that I woke up hours later in the dirt, bruised and bloody, but alive. At least I think I was alive, because the spiral was there, carved into the bandstand and floorboards. Fresh, deep, waiting for me to see it, and I did. So if you're listening, understand this. The killer didn't disappear. He didn't die in the chase. He wanted me to survive, to crawl back here and tell you his story. Which brings me back to where I started. The whisper in the dark, the shadow that never left. He's still out there, and I think he always will be. If you live in a small town, check your locks tonight. Because he likes places like yours. Places that feel safe. Places that trust too easily. That's where he thrives. I've told you everything I can. More than most people ever live long enough to say. But there are still things I've kept back. Things that would ruin you just to hear. Like the truth about his face, or the sound he makes when he knows you're about to break. And here's the worst part. I don't know if he's even human. Maybe he once was. Maybe he never was. Sometimes in the dark, when I replay it all in my head, I think he's something older. Something that wears human skin the way we wear clothes, just to walk among us without raising alarm. If that's true, then it means he's not finished, not with me, not with you. So tell me, have you heard of similar cases? Spiral marks, vanishings, accidents that don't make sense. If you've seen anything, leave it here, because I think he's spreading, moving from town to town, looking for the next place that believes it's untouchable. And the next voice you hear whispering this story might not be mine. If you're watching this, you need to know the truth, because the killer in my town, he's not gone, he never left, and maybe he's already outside your window.